Hi everyone, welcome back. I am welcoming myself back more than anyone else, I am well aware. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah, I'm a UK trained medical doctor, and after having graduated from King's and worked in London during the pandemic, I made the move to Switzerland where I am currently completing my internal medicine residency. On this channel, you will mostly find medically themed videos about night shifts, how to prescribe medication, how to manage time properly, as well as a bunch of videos about life in Switzerland and medicine in Switzerland. Feel free to jump straight into the topic of this video using the timestamps below. For those of you who aren't new, I am not going to ramble on too much because at the end of the day, there's not much to be said. Life happens in its glorious, humbling way, and it forces you to retreat, gather your wits and your strength, and come back hopefully a little bit wiser. I've had to discover and understand the Swiss system through sheer trial and error. I had no idea how anything worked when I came here. And so for those of you medics and non-medics who are thinking of moving to Switzerland and working here, I'm planning on making all the videos you need to have all that information at your fingertips. So without further ado, let's start with a big one. How would you go about coming to Switzerland and working here as a medical doctor? And yes, this includes EU citizens, non-EU citizens, because the distinction is quite important, unfortunately, in this process. Stick around if you're from the UK, because there's specific regulations for you with specific deadlines that you will need to know about. As always, please don't forget to like and subscribe this video before we get started. Okay, let's go. First of all, to set the scene, you need to know who is going to be responsible for recognizing your medical diploma here. They are called MEBICO. They are a branch of the health ministry. They have a really detailed website with everything we're going to talk about today, and they also have an email address that you can obviously use to contact them with your specific questions. I'll have the link of everything I'm talking about in the description box below. The second thing you need to know is that all the conditions we're going to talk about here are cumulative, so they all need to be met at the same time when you are applying. Third piece of information is that the cost of recognizing your degree is going to be roughly between 800 to 1,000, and it can go up to 1,400 if it's for a more particular case. Yes, everything does have a fee in Switzerland, and the sooner you accept it, the better. Now that we've got that out of the way, there are 3 pathways that you can take to get your medical degree recognized. Note that I say medical degree, you need to have finished medical school, uni, to be able to get your degree recognized in Switzerland. So for all 3 of these cases, which we're going to talk about in detail, there is one thing you absolutely need in each case: language. If you can't talk to your patients and you can't communicate with your colleagues, you cannot work here. Pretty straightforward logic. Switzerland has 4 national languages: French, Italian, German, and Romansh. Ignore the Romansh because it's a very small proportion of the country, and even in the official documentation of MEBICO, they ask for one of the 3 main languages. One thing you may not know is that the country is not equally divided into 3 parts. So if you're starting from scratch and you want to learn a language to facilitate your entry into Switzerland, your best bet is to learn German. Up to 70% of Switzerland speaks Swiss German. Notice I said Swiss German, and Swiss German is different to German. Then again, you can communicate with your German, so don't panic. Learn the German if you can, and you can get used to the Swiss German. In any case, what we're focused on right now is getting the requirements, the bare requirements to get your degree recognized. We're not talking about the actual difficulties on the ground that you may face. We'll talk about that in another video. Right, so you've started learning one of the 3 languages. MEBICO wants you to have a B2 level of proficiency. Typically, in a lot of hospitals, they will ask you for a C1 level of proficiency. But again, this is not a hard and fast rule. And I know this for a fact. I actually had a medical interview in a Swiss German hospital. I hadn't realized it was Swiss German, so I went there. I was a bit surprised when the interview was in English. The interview went really well, and they were like, "Great, you've got the job. How's your German, by the way?" That's when it clocked, and I was very honest. I said I had just started learning. He told me that a bunch of colleagues in the department had around a B1 to B2 level proficiency of Swiss German, and that it was fine. I would manage if I had that level, and I would keep learning on the go. So don't let that hold you back. Just focus on getting the main requirements with MEBICO, which is a B2 level. Okay, so now we're done with the language requirements. Let's get into the 3 main pathways to get your medical degree recognized, with the 4th one specific to the UK, which we'll talk about last. The first pathway is the direct recognition of your diploma, and it's a pretty easy route. It does rule out a lot of people though. The requirements are that you have to be an EU or Swiss citizen, or be married to an EU or Swiss citizen, and have studied medicine in the EU. So your medical degree is already EU recognized. By the way, this also includes the EFTA countries, so those that have an agreement of free trade, and that includes countries like Norway and Iceland. If that sounds like you can click on the link below of the application form you need to send in with the documents. Again, it's pretty straightforward. You need to provide a certified copy of your passport, your medical degree, and if your medical degree is not in one of the 3 main languages, then you need to have a certified copy of the translation as well. And finally, your CV. To prove that you have this language proficiency, you can bring up one of 3 proofs. Either you've done a degree in the language of your choice, so one of the main 3, or you have 3 years of professional experience out of the last 10 years in that language. The third option is that you have a diploma recognizing your proficiency level in that language. Once you've collected all these documents, all you have to do is sign the form below and send it off to Mibico. Typically, the waiting time is around 1 to 4 months, but there's no guarantee. It can take longer. For me, it took around 3 months, I believe. So that's what you can be expecting. So let's talk about a few examples where this pathway makes sense. Let's say you are a French citizen and you studied medicine in Romania. You can easily apply for your medical degree to be recognized in Switzerland because you studied in the EU and you're from the EU. Another scenario would be that you're a Swiss national and you went to study medicine in Germany. Same thing, you can easily apply for your medical degree to be recognized, and this is why it's called the direct recognition. Pathway number 2. This is almost like a level 2 in the video games. It gets a bit harder every single time, but it is possible. So for this pathway, there are 3 requirements. The first one is, again, you need to be either an EU or Swiss citizen or be married to an EU or Swiss citizen. And you need to have a medical degree that is recognized by an EU country. And you need to have 3 years of clinical experience out of the last 5 years in that EU country. As you can see, the requirements are more strict. So who does this pathway apply to? Let's give you a few examples. Let's say you're from Brazil. You've married a French citizen, so you fill in the first requirement. You studied medicine in Canada and you have moved back with your spouse to France and worked for, let's say, the last 6 years. And by definition, since you've worked in France for the last 6 years, they've recognized your medical degree, so that's check. And you've worked 6 years, so that's more than what they've asked, so 3 years out of the last 5 years. And therefore, in that scenario, you can apply for your medical degree to be recognized in Switzerland. Another example would be if you're Spanish, you've done your medical degree in Singapore, so you left the EU, you come back to Spain and you've worked for 3 years. Again, in this scenario, you have the EU citizenship. They've recognized your medical degree since you've been working there for 3 years and you've been working there for 3 years. So we're all good. You fulfill the requirements. Let's look at a different example. Let's say you're from Pakistan. You've done your medical degree in Pakistan and you decide to move to Italy. You start working in Italy, so you've got your degree recognized. You're working about 3 years. But the issue is you still don't have your EU citizenship for you to be able to apply for the indirect recognition of your diploma, which is the second section we're talking about. If you want to apply via the second route, what you can do is stay in Italy long enough to become an Italian citizen, and then you've got the citizenship, you've got your medical degree recognized by an EU country, and you've worked there for 3 out of the last 5 years, and so you fulfill those requirements. That's definitely one tip I would give you. Have a look at the naturalization process, so how to become a citizen in different EU countries. It might be slightly easier to go down that route, especially if you're planning on staying in that country for a couple of years, and that doesn't pose a problem. If you manage to get your EU citizenship, it will be a lot easier to then try and make the move to Switzerland. So I hope these examples haven't confused you, but it's just to show that there's so many different scenarios, people in different situations with different nationalities, different spouses, different places they've done their degree. And what you have to figure out is, where do I fit in these 3 pathways? And are there any shortcuts I can take to get through one of the pathways without having to wait X number of years? If you fill all the requirements for the indirect recognition of your diploma, same thing, you go onto the website, the link is down below, fill in that form, the documents they'll ask you are going to be the same pretty much, and you send that off, pay your fee, and wait for the 1 to 4 months typically. We now get to the third pathway, the third level in the video game, so harder than the others, more uncertain, but it is possible. This pathway is for the non-recognizable diplomas. It doesn't mean that it's not recognizable, it just means that they have to do a case-by-case review of each diploma to see if they can give the equivalence in Switzerland. You can have a look at the form, it's not rocket science. They will ask for things like having your medical degree, which took you up to 5 to 6 years, with about 5,500 hours, which is a typical medical degree thing anyways, so you've done that. They'll have a look at whether you have an unrestricted medical license in your country, and with all that information, they will decide whether your degree is recognizable or not, if you had to do any extra years of experience, and what exams you need to take. That can seem a bit unsure and maybe disheartening, but if you've double, triple checked and you cannot apply through the first pathway or the second pathway of direct and indirect recognition of your medical diploma, then there's very little harm in trying this one. Yes, it might cost you money, but if you really want to come to Switzerland, then it is worth the try. There are loads of medical doctors that are working currently in Switzerland that had a non-recognizable diploma. Now, there is a distinction to be made. If you get through via this third pathway, you will have a registered medical degree, but it won't be a recognized medical degree. Now, what is the difference, you might ask? Does anyone care? All you want to do is work in this country. And yes, it does matter. The thing about Switzerland that you might not know is that it's a confederation. It's made up of lots of different little cantons that each have a lot of freedom in different aspects of society. So to summarize, it's up to each canton to decide if they will allow you to work there with your registered but not recognized diploma. This is good news and bad news. The bad news is the uncertainty of it, the having to apply and then you might not know if the canton will accept you or not. The good news is there are loads of different cantons, so don't give up. If you get your degree registered via this route and one canton says no to you, you have lots of other cantons to choose from. So again, it just adds to the process, but it is doable and many people have done it. And this isn't a never-ending story where you're branded for life and you're going to be limited to certain cantons. What you can do is find a canton that allows you to work there, work a couple of years, and in that time you prepare the national federal exam, which once done, you will have a recognized diploma because it'll be the Swiss one. The great thing is that you can be working during that time, so you're making money, you're getting experience, and you're preparing this exam so that you can then be fully registered, fully recognized, just like everyone else. So those are the three main pathways for getting your medical degree recognized in Switzerland. Now there is a fourth section, as promised, for the UK family. A lot of you have been wondering what the specific regulation is for your case since Brexit in 2020. Now I moved in 2021. Rest assured, the information I'm giving you now is coming directly from Mebico, so I can back what I'm saying. It's technically not a fourth pathway, it's more like a golden ticket to the direct recognition of your diploma. We're not supposed to have access to that because for the direct recognition, remember, you need to be an EU citizen or a Swiss citizen or married to an EU or Swiss citizen and have a medical degree in the EU. Being in the UK, you don't have those two requirements. But until the 31st of December 2024, so remember this date, you are allowed to apply via the first route, which is the direct recognizable diploma. So this is an exceptional fourth door that they've left open until this deadline. So again, to summarize, you need to be a British or Swiss national, or be married to a British or Swiss national. So the EU bit, they've just changed to British. And you need to have a UK medical degree. If you fulfill these requirements and you've been thinking about moving to Switzerland, even if you're not entirely sure, I strongly recommend doing so because after this deadline of the 31st of December 2024, it's going to be much harder to get in because you won't be able to use the first or second pathway. So this is a very straightforward, easy way to get in. And once your degree is recognized, there's no rush. You can decide to stay in the UK or move to Switzerland, but you'll always have that option. So I would definitely go for it. Little side note, a bunch of you have asked me when you can get your degree recognised. So in the UK, you've got your 5 or 6 years of medical school. You can't get it recognised just after. You have to do your foundation year 1 before you can get your degree recognised. They don't need your F2, but they definitely need your F1 because it's only after that year that you get your GNC registration. Now, with all these exceptions, there can always be added exceptions. So it can happen that a specific canton will have an extra requirement. But the general rule is that they've allowed for this to happen. And for those of you interested, you should definitely make the most of it. So there we have it. Those are all the routes you can take to get your degree recognised and come and work as a doctor in Switzerland. Now, these are the general rules, but each case can and will be unique. If you would like tailored advice concerning your specific situation, drop me an email and I'll let you know if I can be of any help. I hope this video was useful to you and I will see you in the next one. Bye.